Nearly 2,300 years ago, an ideology that would change the world and create the strongest, most resilient men on the planet was born. A philosophy that has a deep-rooted influence on Christianity and is practiced in behavioral therapy, being proven to reduce feelings of fear and anxiety. But Stoicism isn't what you think it is. It's not having no emotions or being a stone-cold sociopath. From how it was created, how it nearly got destroyed, the core principles needed to become a Stoic, the lives of the most revolutionary Stoic from Zeno to Marcus Aurelius, along with misconceptions about the philosophy, actionable Stoic practices you can start straight away, and much more. This is the entire Stoic philosophy explained. Stoicism is made up of three components: physics, logic, and ethics. Ethics is the one you probably know of. It is the study of how to live your life. The other two, physics and logic, you may be less familiar with. The three together make up the Stoic garden, logic being the protective fence defending Stoicism from the criticism of other ideologies. Physics is the nurturing ground that nourishes ethics, which is the precious fruit. To start with physics, being the study of how the world works, Stoics believed that the universe had a beginning and end, and that the world is made up of matter. They also believed in the cosmos, also called the Logos, which in Stoic writing is referred to as many things. If you ever see them write about God, matter, substance, element, soul, or state, you know that these words are interchangeably used to refer to the cosmos. The cosmos is the all-encompassing force of reason, with its existence being based on everything our senses can perceive, and is made up of matter and pneuma. Matter is passive and lifeless on its own, and able to be destroyed, whereas pneuma is the active force in the cosmos. It is described by Chrysippus as the vehicle of the Logos. It is what makes the universe alive, controlling the movements of the stars and the planets, waves of the sea, and the existence of life. Bearing in mind that they didn't have science as we have today, so the Logos were more of a prediction of how the world works. Some of these ideas ended up being true, but others can now be explained. According to Stoics, knowledge of physics is not impractical or disconnected from living a good life. A wise and happy person is also a physicist. The Stoics believed that the cosmos had everything already determined, but with countless realities depending on what choices you make. Therefore, many different paths you are able to choose depending on how you decide to live your life. Logic, on the other hand, is what defends the Stoics against other ways of thinking, and is what stopped its teachings from being torn apart by a man called Aristotle in the ancient times. Unlike parts of Stoic physics, Stoic logic as a way of thinking is still used today. The idea is that knowledge can be attained through reason, and we are capable as humans of separating true from false. This is unlike what skeptics believed at the time, saying that humans are unable to discover knowledge. The Stoics, however, said that knowledge can be attained, but must be done with peer expertise and collective judgment. They thought you were unable to come to knowledge by yourself, as you could easily get in your own head and fool yourself. This is similar to how modern science is now. Things need to be peer-reviewed in order to become fact. In Stoicism, you need to have an open conversation with others, and then learn the principles of logic to check if it's right or wrong.
Word. Trusty Ape. Howdy. Welcome, everybody. Put the old Lanky Poo. I'll show off my new tattoo here.
Yeah, there it is.
Decided to go with the good impulses. If I was going to make an impulsive decision, wasn't going to be something self-destructive. At least not as far as I see it. So that's the latest ink. It's the first tattoo I've ever gotten sober, so felt pretty good. Hope everybody's doing well. I am doing splendidly. Kind of get into some of this. If anybody wants to join, obviously the link is there. Be going on for a little bit here. Got one in the back. I'm waiting for this thing to load so I can pause it. There it is again. She just keeps asking me for money. No matter how many times I say no.
I picked Purdue Global because I think having an online platform to learn is really great for.
Hey, welcome in, Kelvy. How you doing?
Hey, good evening. Time is running out for the Kamala campaign.
You gotta support their campaign. Holy shit, I'm probably gonna end up having to vote for her because I feel like I have no other choice. No. It's the lesser of two evils. Maybe not. I don't know.
Well, I don't know about her herself, but I think everything behind her is completely. But
I'm hearing good stuff about this guy Waltz. I'm not really familiar with him, but I know Bernie supported him, so I think Bernie's just a shill at this point too, since he's never going to run again.
it sounds like the Democrat version of Joe the Plumber. That I was voting Democrat back when that happened, but yeah, I still think that was like just good. They were like, "Oh, what's up?" I don't even think his name was Joe. They're like, "Oh, Joe Plumber. Let's have Joe Plumber come up and tell how much he's just to kind of like relate to the people." It's I don't know. I can't stand pandering, but I think a large part of the population does. They either don't recognize pandering or they actually succumb to it. Like they because I don't know if it's some species of narcissism or if it's just that most people are some form of narcissistic to where they don't care or they just don't recognize that they're being pandered to. They enjoy it. They feel like they're entitled to be pandered to, and they're just like, yes, pander to me. Where about, I don't know, it's just my upbringing or what, where I'm just like, it makes me cringe when I see somebody purposefully trying to manipulate me emotionally. It's not like, oh, I don't feel flattered when somebody does that. I'm like, I feel like uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think at some point they just start hearing what they want to hear because they realize that there's really like no alternative. That's the way I feel about it. Like that's kind of been my position. It's like, oh well, the guy I really want's never actually going to get elected, so let me just try to find something good about this person who's going to end up taking it anyway.
Yeah, it depends on where you're. I don't want to say it's subjective because I don't think it actually is, but for most people, the reality of it, I think it is. Because I always think about, because at this point I'm more conservative than anything, just sort of ipso facto. It's just turned out that way. And then, but you know, I still can't ignore if I think about some like poor woman in like inner city with like 8 kids, regardless of the circumstances, because you can sit there and whine about, whoa, they're just anchor babies, or they're just like whatever kind of excuse you can make. It's still the fact that those particular people, they don't care about geopolitics. They care about feeding their kids. So if you're going to promise, because everybody's like, well, all they want is handouts. All those people want it. And it's like, well, yeah. So now what? Like, okay, like that's like, I think the reality is there, but it's like people seem to assume that other people should just naturally, by osmosis, have their view for no reason at all. It's like, what? Because it's like, well, doesn't that inner city mother, doesn't she know what they're saying in freaking, Israel, or like North Korea, or like, it's like they don't give a shit. Like they're trying to feed their kids, or they're trying to get their whatever they're trying to do. It has nothing to do with what's going on beyond their freaking, like, their city, probably. I mean, I don't know if that's. I mean, I think it's just the way it is for most people.
Yeah, I think it's like whataboutism, right? Like you could just like find any group of people and that's kind of like the old school, like, oh, at least you're not living in China, like that's like, a big one they'll go to. It's like, would you rather, why don't you go try living in China for a few years? It's like, oh, okay. And should that like deter us from actually trying to improve, our own, status socioeconomically or whatever? Like,
it's a fine line. Well, it's like I'm watching these riots that are happening across the UK right now, and it's like I can see the point of the one, but then naturally, there's always the fringe element that's going to just go crazy, and then there's always going to be the element of suspicion. And once you have the element of suspicion, I mean, it's a relationship. It's almost like a marriage, the relationship between the public and the and their governance. And once that's not there, at least as an American, I don't know, are you American? Are you actually? You're talking about voting, so yeah, you're American, duh.
Yeah, I was born here.
But we have this idea, I think, that the government is on the behest, or operates at the behest of the people, at the pleasure of the people. And so if I don't have if as a person I don't agree with what the government's doing, then,
I always kind of feel like I'm on the outskirts of
it's not shared by
kind
Europeans.
of the political spectrum, right? Like, because I'm in California, I've been here most of my life. So like anything that's going on in any other part of the country, it's like it almost seems like it doesn't affect us. I mean, obviously it does, but we just have our own policies here, and we're so hardline, we're so hard left. It's like even the conservatives here are relatively moderate compared to a lot of other places in the country. So
Yeah, that's wild. That's even been like that from, like, I was very close to moving there back in probably right before the 2000s. I was going to move there with somebody, but I never did it. But the concept of it was like, yeah, it was like moving to another country. When it came down to it, and that's only grew. And they, if you look at like people sort of migrating from California to like, what is it, like Houston and Texas, and it's like this exportation of culture. Also, is what it is. And I mean, if comparing it to, I have to compare everything through the lens of history, and so it's like, just because they're the same country, the same language, and the same laws of a like federal, like, it's still the same concept that you're seeing of like these types of culture wars that are happening. of just the it's I don't know, it's like the natural ebb and flow, I think, of societies. Unfortunately, that's why. But I don't think there's ever going to be a point where the general, stratum of society is really going to maintain that. I don't know what you want to. What I don't know what I even expect, because because like I said, like I said before, it seems like things are getting so bad, but that's still a matter of there's a crescendo, and there's just things are going to get better, and then things are going to get worse, and things are going to get better. It's just, thing is, like, what kind of damage is going to happen in between those times, and that's where I think people have a tendency to minimize it, and then it's like, all right, well, what am I talking about? What am I suggesting? But I think the more people can be taught to have level heads about things, the better, regardless of what. Like, I was watching one video about something, and it was about politics. I forgot what it was. They were comparing. Oh, somebody quoted my politics in like 2014, and it was like, yeah, the government should do it, and and then the police did, all this kind of stuff. And it was and it's like my politics now, and it's quoting Gandalf when he's reading the book of Maz-Zubal and Moria, and he's like, they are coming. We cannot get out. Drums in the deep. Their shadow moves in the dark. And all throughout the I'm reading the comments for like freaking like 10 minutes, and everybody's like, yeah, this is like, everything. And everybody's like talking about these politics, and I realized, like, I couldn't tell whose side anybody was on. Like, if it was everybody was like a leftist, or everybody was like a whatever, arch conservative, or a Trumpist, or I really couldn't tell. Like, once in a while, the only one I saw that I can remember, somebody was like, they said they were a liberal, but they were viewed as as far right because everybody's so far left. But I don't know where they're from.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I feel like on most issues. I consider myself more progressive than liberal, but like I'm, so far in that direction that, a lot of the standard leftists don't want any part of it. But then on certain issues, I am more moderate, or I would even say like, I lean libertarian in some ways, but it's like, it's very divided for me. Like it's very much like, on particular issues. I'll either side with like the extreme left, on like the democratic socialist side, or I'll lean libertarian,
Yeah, I can't think of because I don't know, the older I get, the less just naturally, it's less energy you have. It's just the way it happens. Where it's like, what would I be doing if a number of circumstances hadn't happened? One of them being older. That's one particular thing. But if things were like, if I, that's what everybody thinks about when they get a certain, if I was a certain age, but it was like it was now or something, like, what would I be doing, or how would I be reacting? Like if I was at if I was in my 20s or 30s, it'd be interesting, because it's wild to see things get so different that you do think of it in that way. Or about it, at certain points throughout the decades, things are relatively similar. But at this point now, a lot of the back and forth between people, like there was a certain point where it became clear, for example, at work, that there was a point where I did feel like you had to start watching what you said, which was very bizarre to me. And that's like one element of culture that's changed, like within the last 20 years or 15 years. It seemed to veer. But I mean, think about the past, think about the 1950s. So I mean, this is the thing. It's like, just like you said, like there's this. It's not like it's that's necessarily indicative of the downfall of civilization. It's just the general.
I think, there's certain things like, I don't know if it's like, the autism thing or whatever, where I will say something sarcastically or humorously, but it doesn't land. Like only certain people will understand that I'm being humorous, and I'll say something probably, that's like would register as very dark, but you'd have to know me. So, I will say things definitely to people, in my personal life that I wouldn't say on here, right? Um, because mainly because I think it would be misread by most people.
Yeah, I grew up like we had an album called there's an album called by a band called Two Live Crew. You ever hear that? That there's it's called Nasty as They Want to Be. Like we had that memorized. Like that came out. I was probably like 12 or 13. Like we know like every word to that. And then me and my friend had this. It was a Christmas tape that had these like racist, dirty Christmas versions of songs. Like, but I don't know who did it. I think I looked one up once. I still don't remember the name of the guy. If it was like, but yeah, we would listen to that like year round when we were like 13, 14. I remember at one point his like, I think he lived with his aunt. She just like came in and like freaked out once. I think she was like Catholic or something, and she was just like one day was just like get this out. She like stole the tape and they got into a big fight about it. And I had to take it and like brought it over to my house. And I'm like listening to it. And now
It reminds me of
can't hear
when
a
I
song without listening to it, without hearing those songs. It is very good.
that like reminds me of when I got the album Mechanical Animals by Marilyn Manson, and my mom just saw the album cover and she went, "What the hell is that?" And it was like the Walmart version, so it was even like the censored lyrics and all of that. But she just I was like, "This is what's like this is what's cool now." She just didn't get it. It was just based on the imagery. I was like, but the lyrics are deep. Listen to this. She goes, back in my day, we used to listen to, Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue, because my mom's younger. And that was considered wild because they were coming out in like spandex with their hair teased and shit, And you got
Yeah, but in the
Marilyn
early
Manson.
80s, Dead Kennedys had a album. I don't know if it was in the cover, if it was on the inner sleeve, but it was an artwork by H.R. Geiger, from the guy that did Alien, and it's literally how he has like the alien heads, like he has a lot of art that makes it look like penises or vulva or whatever. So he had them kind of shaped to where it would look like butts with penises going in them, but symmetrically arranged and just this just large sort of thing. And yeah, this was the freaking cover. And these kids, and because at this point this was the beginning of the censorship of the album art, and that's where that guy, whatever his name is, Jello Biafra, was started like bringing that stuff to court. You can see like, you can probably find video of it of them like arguing about it, and then instituting stuff. It's interesting towards the change of the way the government authority goes. Like I remember watching a couple years ago the debate between Nixon and Kennedy in like 1960 or something, and at one point they were talking about the role that the federal government plays in the education system, and they were like, "Yeah, we both agree that." That the federal government, like basically that nothing should happen in it. Like that the farther away, like any sort of inkling of the president or anybody trying to touch, like that was like a hot button thing at the time. So like any federal government trying to do anything. Now again, I could see different, because again, you can look at different scopes on it. Like I said, because in Germany, for example, you're not allowed to homeschool your kids, and it's like, well, why wouldn't they want you to be able to do that? And it's like, well, because they don't want people to like sit there and teach people Nazism, basically. So So there's a reasoning behind everything usually.
Yeah, I do always find that kind of an interesting thing because a lot of places in the UK, I think, especially in Germany, right? Like it's not illegal to be a Nazi per se, right? But you can't have any of the propaganda. You can't have the symbolism. You can't have the flags. You can't have the Mein Kampf or anything like that. Like they've literally banned all of that stuff. And yet, in other ways, they're kind of a bastion of liberal free speech, right? But only if it leans politically a certain way, because they're so terrified of of having that revived.
Yeah, they can. They the fact that they can go to prison or go to jail. Like I saw a video the other day of like police coming to somebody's door, just literally saying, you posted some of your lines and people didn't like it. Now we're here to take you to jail. Like, it was like some old man. Just like, that's wild.
I met a German guy many years ago who moved. He lived in Southern California in LA, and he said he moved to the US so he could become a National Socialist. That was his whole reason for immigrating. I was like, wow, that's really interesting.
It's wild. Yeah, I've seen that it's like stuff like that's like actually is burgeoning to where once you get more generations removed, things that were taboo to even talk about are going to become more open. So that's where it's just and it's inevitable. The only thing you can do is be diligent about it and keep people educated. Like you saw that thing with the Dietrich Bonhoeffer's theory of stupidity.
That sounds familiar. Is that
There's like there's a little short video about it.
Okay.
Where they show like animations of like they drew like stick figures. They have like one of the, if you ever seen it, like there's like a pretty popular video on it. But because he was like a preacher who was watching like Nazi Germany come up, and then he was like basically like what's going on, like and eventually he got taken to jail and executed. But when he was in jail, he wrote like about just the concept of the more, basically all in all, the more people, the more groups of, it's pretty much like groupthink. The more groupthink you're going to have, the more people are going to turn off their rational mind and start to stop actually thinking about why they're doing things. And so it becomes this basically more of a moral issue, because if you're not thinking about how you're affecting things, then you're also not thinking about how you're affecting others either. And so, and you're not, and then what's worse is you're not even aware that you're not even trying to worry about it. So it's an extra layer of sort of ignorance, which basically becomes, again, like he called it, stupidity, and he kind of plugged it as a moral failing rather than a an intellectual defect. Because I don't ever want to call it, because different people have different mental capacities. That's just a fact. Some people are good at math. Some people really are not good at math. Some people are good at whatever. Some people, lots of different things. Like I'll never be able to like run a business probably. Like people that actually like CEOs and have like do whatever and tell people what to do. It's never going to happen. I'm just never going to be able to do it. For some reason, something in my brain doesn't click like that. It's just people have different clicks and they're different brains. But there's a level of coming to grips with that rather than, again, just sort of, I guess, the level of just doing what you're told and turning off your brain and then becoming, stupid. That's what he said. Like, people are made stupid. And then basically you can't reason with people that are stupid. Like, all you can do is either, like, it has to be some form of, like, well, the way he put it was, like, some, like, form of, like, great enlightenment or some breakthrough or whatever. I have to find the writings. So, actually, I'd like to like, do a audio of it. The whole thing.
I'll look it up. I think technology kind of bridges that gap though, because like me, like I'm weak in math skills, right? I'm really good with English and word problems and stuff like that. But put numbers in front of me and I just get baffled, right? But I can use technology to overcome that, that weakness. So but I think at the same time, like there's different aspects where that can become like a counterproductive, right? Like because people can write alternative history. So if I'm trying to look up history and then there's 5 different versions of the same events, it's like, oh, which one's the real one? And now I have to kind of parse that out. And there's people who will just kind of take everything they read at face value, which is why like the memes on the internet are becoming so problematic, because you could post something that looks like factoids, it has some statistic in there, and if you don't know how to do research and find out the sourcing for those stats, right, then you're just going to be like, oh well, 30% of all Americans are allergic to dairy, or I don't know, something, or I don't even think that's a real number. I mean, a real statistic, but people just make that shit up, and then you wouldn't know the difference.
It's true. Yeah, it's only exponentially exacerbated, like because that sort of like misinformation has always been there in a form of it, but because technology is allowed, yeah, for all of the things that technology has amplified, yeah, it's only same thing with scammers and that sort of thing. Like it's made the ability for crime to happen a lot better as well. Again, it's just another sort of dimension of. It's like all of a sudden having the ability to fly. If everybody could fly all of a sudden, like think about how society would change. I mean, the internet's basically that, because you can sending information at the speed of light. I mean, it's arguably more advanced than even that. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
It's interesting because, oh, what's up, Nanya Biz? Good to see you. Sid Poke more smart, you'll fly. Now, been there, done that. No. I'm all right. I'll stay grounded. So I looked this up because I've actually been paying a bit of attention to the news lately, and I didn't hear anything about this. So I just like briefly Googled, searched it, and it.
Like right now, because I was curious, because I was asking my mother if she had heard anything about this, and she said no, and she just keeps the TV on. Not that she follows European politics, but I would think something like this. But then again, at these days, I would.
Of course, these are all from. Yeah, these are all from left-wing media sources for the most part. Let's go with BBC here. Yeah, they're saying
well,
the
basically,
racists are protesting.
Like 3 girls got stabbed. There's always been there's been tensions between Muslims and then the people who are tired of Muslims, basically, and then recently 3 girls got stabbed by somebody. And now the person who stabbed these girls and killed them wasn't an immigrant. I think his parents were, but like whatever. But then people turned out at like a vigil, but then they turned out protesting against immigrants anyway. And then that got bigger. And then because then people started coming out, oh, we're protesting in honor of this girl, or these 3 girls rather. And then other people were like, well, no, we're protesting because the police, because at some point it became more about the way the police are treating the different protesters. Because right before this happened, like I think the same week that this happened, there was like an impromptu, from what I understand. I guess it wasn't impromptu. Nothing's impromptu in London. Like so basically like a Muslim festival where they did like a parade or something like that. So that sort of stirred people up before this, and then this. So like this whole series of events just happened that just, to me, it's almost like, I don't think it's like orchestrated, but I could see where people think things like that. Where if you look back and see how things start unfolding. I mean, I guess it could be. Because the police, you can see that. I mean, there's been stuff in the. I don't know if you're following what's happening there, because like a few weeks before this, there was an area where these people went and they took a child. It was like child welfare, like because there's apparently a big problem. There's like these huge grooming gangs that the police have basically like they've found out that they knew about it, but they weren't doing anything about it. And they specifically had like inquiries, and and it was one of those things where like nobody got in trouble, or I don't know, maybe something like I don't know, I don't follow it too closely. But then but anyway, fast forward to like a few weeks ago, and like child welfare services went and took some children away from like certain communities, and then those communities started like burning down police cars and like rioting basically, and then. Again, so that happened before that, and then so you have these just complete series of events just nonstop. Like Britain is just getting slammed right now. It's not just Britain either, because then before that, they're just having a large. The pendulum is swinging. That's just what happens, Pendulum gets one direction, gets too much gravity and weight, and then it comes down the other direction, swings and knocks and scoops.
Yeah, they've been doing their immigration battle for a while too.
They're saying the more about
I'm kind of
tier policing is the
on the
chant
fence about that whole thing, because I do think.
Sorry.
Yeah. Let me go off cam. It might help my bandwidth a little bit here.
I think I'm going to shave this. My mother said,
there does. Shave your beard?
Yeah, my mom said it looks like a merkin. I'm going to stay with that.
My mom told me I looked like Abraham Lincoln. I thought was.
I have to see with the hat.
I told a girl today online. She was like, "What do you look like?" And I said, "I somewhat resemble Marcus Aurelius, Because when I look at the bust, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of like my look right now."
I used the bust of
Oh wow, so these are very young children.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Of who?
When I did the Justin Martyr letter to, because his first letter was written to, he wrote two letters. One of them was to the Senate, and one of them was to, it was when Marcus Aurelius was like he would have been a teenager, I think, at the time, and it was written to, because Marcus Aurelius basically, supposedly, he learned all of his philosophical stuff from his adopted father, Antoninus Pius. But anyway, that guy, Antoninus Pius, he has this like huge like afro and this like goatee. It looks awesome. I used him on the cover of my thing, but he doesn't get a lot of attention. But Antoninus Pius is a because I don't think any of his writings survive. It's a problem.
Yeah. Marcus was the one kind of known for his writing, and yeah, I know he does mention him in the very first part of Meditations. He makes a whole, and then he goes through like his family and his mentors and everything. But after that, it's just kind of a brief, mention, and then he just goes on to do his own thing, which is what he's most famous for. Have you ever read through that entirely, Meditations?
Yeah. It's been a while.
I think it's great.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I keep the audiobook preloaded, so like, if I'm in the car commuting or something, I'll just put it on, and I always get something out of it,
Yeah, because he was considered. Was he considered a Stoic in general?
Yeah, he was. I mean, he's probably the most famous Stoic, I think, but a lot of his writing is plagiarized, I think, or not plagiarized, but borrowed from. He kind of carries a lot of his stuff down from other Stoics who are now less famous.
Right. Yeah, I think Seneca. Some of his works, and obviously Cicero. Although I don't think Cicero was really considered a Stoic necessarily. I think he was more like I don't know. I don't think he was like a half Stoic. Cicero.
I think Cicero was actually a Democrat, like one of the original Democrats, if I remember correctly. I don't want to look that up now. Which, of course, comes down from Democritus, right? That's where we get the word.
I have read all of Cicero's letters. Actually, I did a version of his second Philippic against Mark Antony, where I put like senators like grumbling in the background and stuff. I listened to it the other day with my cousin. It was funny. It's like basically Cicero rattling off about Mark Antony's, he's he really goes at him with the slander. He's like, oh, as soon as you assume the manly toga, you and your boyfriend turned into a bridesmaid's gown or something like that.
Yeah, I was just looking at it. He's like considered the like one of the great I'm gonna say this word wrong, rhetoricians. So he was a master of rhetoric.
Yeah, that was a big thing back then. Like people went to school for it. Specifically for it. People went to school for it. Specifically for it. Yeah, Romans were a lot more conservative. Think about more. Like, for example, Cato the Elder is said to have boasted that the only time his wife ever touched him in public, or that he and his wife ever made contact in public, was because like lightning struck a tree nearby and she like grabbed his arm, and then he like scolded her for it.
Sounds about right.
And like there's like the laws that the Octavian laws that were like against marriage or for marriage, like pro marriage, like more rewarded. If it made like adultery illegal and that sort of thing. Although there's a lot of other writers that say that was like, obviously they were all hypocritical. That there's always this veneer.
Yeah, it was.
That there's always this veneer.
It was like it was more of for show, like, right, you just didn't get caught. If you got caught, it was scandalous, but everybody was doing it, that type of thing.
Probably. Yeah, because you can read other writers. Satire writers. There's a writer named Juvenal. Have you ever read him?
A little bit. I've heard some about him, but yeah, no, I'm not as familiar with Juvenal.
I did some audiobooks of him. First few satires. I started hating them, and I started realizing I actually despise the translations that I'm using, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Yeah, you know what's funny? Cicero, like I said, I got into Cicero big time at one point, and his birthday is the same day as J.R.R. Tolkien, and they look a lot alike, man. Like back in the day, I thought that they were the reincarnation of each other. Like, look at a picture of Cicero and look at a picture of Tolkien. And look at their birthday. It's wild.
Oh, Tobin said I got an echo going on. Yeah, I'm messing with my mic. Sorry, man. 1 second. See, hopefully that's a little better. And it's probably not you. It's me. It's always me. I really do need to get some new headphones. I was trying to see what his philosophy falls under. He's considered an academic skeptic.
Well, I could tell you basically, he didn't necessarily believe in the gods. He was more of a he pretty much was mostly I mean, again, he didn't completely ascribe to Stoicism necessarily. It's kind of like a mixture between like Stoicism and Epicureanism. I mean, he has I have read his entire On the Nature of the Gods, the Deorum Naturam, and the Tusculan Disputations, which I ordered. I remember it's one of the first things I like randomly ordered from some random book place like back in the day. From like, and like half of it, like it was printed out, was like wrong because it was like some like probably some fly by night book printing company. It was bizarre. Like I could read enough of it to get through back when I actually need it, because now you can look up all that stuff and read it. But it was called Tusculan Disputations, where it's like a dialogue that he wrote, where literally it's just like them discussing the nature of reality and life and death and the gods and free will and everything else. Like, yeah, he's just a general philosopher. Like I would just call him a Platonic, really.
Yeah, according to this, he was part of the Hellenistic group, I guess.
Or Platonists.
So that's yeah. But if I remember correctly, right, he was the one. Mark Antony had his head and hands nailed to the door of the Senate because he was.
Yes, for the speech that I read, that I was just talking about, the Philippics. Like he did like there's like 12 or 14 Philippics actually, I think, but the second one is the one that's basically is the worst. although it wasn't actually truly delivered. It was written, and he sent it to like Cassius and Brutus and a bunch of some other people. But that's like the one he didn't actually deliver. I didn't mention that in the description. But yeah, if you ever check that out, I think it's funny because I use the background noises from like random like one of them was from like a blooper reel from a news like the show called, well, I don't want to get into it. I don't know. I was cracking up listening to it the other day because there's parts where I'm like, because where he's talking about like his wife, and he's like, yes, and he's like, and you were led on a chair. He's like, the consul of Rome was being led on a chariot. He's like and was followed by jugglers and pimps, and your wife, who is an actress, you know. In the background, I put senators like, oh.
Sounds about right.
It's like the vomited within the sight of the Roman public. It's like and you're reeking bits of what you had eaten the night before, sitting in the folds of your purple toga. You know, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, and I think he was. Wasn't he commissioning like people were doing like a pornographic art of I don't remember if it was Caesar's wife or his sister or something like that too, like around the city.
Probably.
Yeah.
I remember HBO Room had that. They were like, it was it was actually Caesar's niece, who was Octavian's mother, who was pissed off at Brutus's mother, and so who Caesar was, because it was true that Caesar was supposedly having a love affair with Brutus's mother, Servilia. And like there's like stories of like when Caesar, because like Caesar and like Cato hate each other, and like there's like stories of like Caesar like Brutus passing a note to Caesar while they're like in the middle of the Senate, and then Cassius or Cato standing up and demanding that it be read aloud in the Senate House, and like a love letter from Servilia. There's always like random. I don't know, man. I love reading those like early, just imagining like just life before TV.
Human, all too human. Yeah. What's up, Tobin? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
I am pretty darn good. Yeah, you know, for all intents and purposes. No.
You were here before, right? I think I've seen you here before.
Yeah, I've hung out with Kevin a couple of times. How do you pronounce your name? Is that Kelby Cuello?
Yeah, or Kelvy. Kelvy's good.
Kelby? Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. Is that like a beer pong thing back there?
You know, it could be attributed to that.
So
Although I don't drink beer. I will play some beer pong though.
Yeah, I don't know.
The non-alcoholic sort, yeah.
Yeah, we could put something gross in the cup that I wouldn't want to drink, and that might ante or give the game some kind of or is it that you want to drink the cup? That's why you're shooting for it. So oh yeah. So put some Canada Dry in the cup, and I'll shoot for that thing. Damn sure.
Yeah, I think that's kind of cheating though, because the whole concept behind beer pong is like the more you win, the worse you get, because you get drunk and then your motor reflexes are fucked. You know. It's kind of like playing pool at a bar.
It's true. And what's sort of the fun
Oddly
part?
enough, that's the What were you saying?
Yeah, it is the fun part. A lot of stuff like that. Interestingly.
Yeah, I had
Again,
to relearn to play pool sober because I was actually a better shot when I was drinking. For the most part, just being looser and or whatever. So I'm a lot more like, I guess, critical of my shot when I'm sober. So I had to kind of recalibrate for that.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy how like the more thinking you put into making a shot, whether it's with archery or shooting pool or pitching, the less you think about it and you just kind of go through the motions, it's almost like we have a better capability, but you can think things. It's strange.
and, muscle memory.
And hi, Kelly. Good to see you. Bow and arrow. That's quite a skill right there. I've shot with a bow a couple of times. I actually have one, but I haven't used it in a long time. It's hanging up on the wall right now in the studio. It's just like a showpiece.
I've shot a lot of archery, and I used to go fishing with my bow, and that is a lot of fun, but I don't really do it too much anymore because I don't know. I don't I like just admiring the fish more.
I used to be able to throw an axe. I can't do it anymore. I've tried it. Or last time I tried it, I basically just couldn't do it anymore. I used to be able to do it like every time. So I had a roommate who he had like a big sewing machine. He would make medieval clothing, and then we would basically go to like Renaissance festivals and stuff, or we just like wear like random stuff. Like one day we wore like great kilts and walked like down the street to the mall, just like for the hell of it. So we like went to all these events and like learned all this like fencing, that sort of stuff. But yeah, I can't do
Heck
it
yeah.
anymore. Can't do it anymore. All that stuff is lost.
I got pretty good at throwing knives there for a while, but that's one you have to really stay in practice with.
Yes.
Because I tried it like last
That's
year, and I was actually a few months ago, and it was just an epic failure.
Yep, that too. Yeah, I have those little things, like the ones you get at the flea market, like in the sleeves with the blades that come out of it, like those types of things. Yeah, I remember trying to like hit those again, and I lost it. I'm sure if I tried again, but yeah, I sat there for a while, and I was like, all right, I don't have time for this.
Now, firearms, I don't know, for some reason, that's like, second nature. I can just pick up any gun and shoot pretty proficiently. Doesn't take a whole lot of practice. But that's pretty simple. You don't have to judge too much for, like, what do you call that? Like lob or trajectory or any of that stuff, it's just point and click.
There's a lot of variables.
Yeah, even the wind can mess up the trajectory on shooting a bow and arrow.
I think it's good to have a gun close by at all times. I heard a rifle shot outside the window from somebody. Must have shot from the street. It is so loud. Like I hear gunshots all the time. I don't know if I didn't have if I wasn't armed in general, it would suck.
Yeah, people shoot out here quite a bit, quite often. Although I'm out in the rural country, so it's just like one of those things people do. Even one of my buddies I used to have that lived in the neighborhood had the skeet shoot. That was pretty fun, shooting the shotguns and hitting the skeets. That was entertaining. That was fun. Y'all ever get to do any of that?
I never have yet. My cousin wants to take me. My younger cousin. He's got like a couple shotguns. He's more into guns than I am. Although somebody's sending me. Yo, what up, Will?
Hey, homies.
Good evening.
Somebody I lived with back in 2003 to 2006, maybe. He's gonna send me a video of us walking through Fort Armistead, which is a old like World War I fort with a bunch of people, probably smoking blunts or whatever. And it was right underneath the Key Bridge. I mean, I'm not sure how much is in it. Like I still need to ask him if he can see the bridge in it. That'd be pretty cool. Or if we're actually just seen like doing anything illegal in it. But it should be interesting. I have no idea what I looked like back then. Although I was just starting IT, so I probably was pretty clean cut.
Yeah, sounds about right. Reminds me of like all my post drug use days. Like I go from like looking like a long haired hippie freak, and then all of a sudden I'm like all clean shaven, and I look like I'm 20 again or something. It's like, whoa.
That's what I'm saying. I want to shave this off, but I want to say that the longer it gets now, that I want to, because at some point, because it's going to turn into, I'm going to get the wizard point, and I'm not going to want to get rid of that, because like you got to have the wizard point if you're going to have a beard, and just like shaving that off, man, it's like losing an asset. I don't know what kind of asset, but
You go for the ZZ Top look, just let it.
now that my mother compared it to a pubic wig, I can't stop thinking about it now. I'm just like, gosh.
I had this weird interaction at the last bar I was at some weeks ago. This dude came up to me and was like, put his hand up on my face, kind of like this, and was like, "You know what you need to do? You need to shave it where you don't look like you have a chin strap with the goatee." And I was like, well, what if I like having a chin strap with the goatee? And I held back because I really wanted to be like, well, what? Do you want me to look like you and look like Fuzzy the Bear? And you know what? Now I remember you, Kelvy. Now that I saw your face, we have talked over here before.
So I can't believe somebody was shitting on that combo. I rock the chin strap. Rock the chin strap and goatee combo. I dare somebody to say something about that.
I was doing that for a while, just shaving this part.
Get that Amish thing going on. That's intimidating. You know what I'm saying? When you just do the mustache.
I always said I was taking it back from the Muslims and the Amish.
I mean, it's a cool look. It just, it's intimidating.
It's like, yeah, it does give air of authority, I think. I
don't know. For me, it's just I don't like eating my mustache. That's what always ends up happening. I get a little bit of length on it. It's in my mouth. I'm like, get this thing out of here.
You ever had it make you drool? Like get in the corner of your mouth just enough to make you kind of drool just a little bit. You're like, oh, God, a little something. Yeah. That happened.
Or when it starts getting real coarse, when it goes back up your nose.
Yeah, and you start chewing on it, it's a problem.
Yeah, it
Nope.
can't go up my nose if I let my nose hairs grow really long. It stops it, you see. That's I was like, fuck the mustache. Just groom the nose hairs out.
Oh, yeah.
That's a
So
joke.
Will, I gotta ask, did you ever end up running Maximus off a Wild Heart stream, or are they still over there?
Yeah, finally. They closed it down. Yeah, it took forever. That guy is on the spectrum.
Marcian's goat.
Yes.
I just read some stuff about Marcian. Oh,
Wow,
nothing.
that's unusual.
Nothing we didn't know about Marcian.
Well, I don't know that we really know any of it. Well, not.
Yeah, it's all
that wasn't reported.
It's all reportings of reportings of the guy.
Yeah. So I don't put a whole lot of faith in it being complete or super accurate, but it's the best we got.
I mean, the thing is, if what he taught, because if everybody agrees on what he taught is what he taught, I don't see where you're arguing. Maybe
Well, when your history, the only history about you is written by your enemies, your people who are actively trying to shut you up and make you seem unholy, then it's really hard to trust that as a non-biased source.
Right, but if you agree that the worst thing that these other church guys could have said about somebody is that they did think that the Old Testament God is evil and that sort of thing, and that's not the same. Like these things, then if you're saying that that's a lie, that Marcion didn't teach that, then why would it matter? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why would then? Like, it wouldn't make any sense. Like, why would they make that up? Because in that case, they might as well just made up a fictional person because if the entire concept of
Can I answer?
Eating from the Orthodox.
Can I answer?
You know?
It's called spin. It's like he may have believed something like this, but the idea is to exaggerate it to the point where he's somehow offending the truth. And by offending the truth, whatever they've decided, those who are judging him a heretic, whatever they've decided to believe is true. So they want to shut up the guy that is saying something about a common belief system, but not agreeing with them.
Well, he didn't agree with them. So
No, he didn't.
Where's the lie? Yeah, but
Well,
it's not like they're saying he ate babies. You know, like if there's a whole bunch of stuff saying they did that, then I would agree. Be like, yeah, maybe that's some slander just for the sake of slander. But I mean,
right. I'm sure that he believed, and I think Irenaeus thought he was making strong arguments about him being a heretic. But in order to do that, he was claiming that what he had was authoritative, and that this guy had no right to speak on it.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, in that case, if we're talking about what purports to, if a doctrine needs to purport to Scripture, or if it doesn't, you know, if you're saying that what it means to be a Christian, for example, is that you believe Jesus is God and Jesus died for your sins, and that there's no God above God, and that He's the same, He's the Son of the God of the Old Testament, right? Like, if that's what it means to be a Christian, and so if somebody's openly teaching that that's not true, then I think that's, and there are people that teach that. So I don't see where it's like necessarily like the spin would come in, because again, like where's the spin? Because if Marcion didn't really teach that, then what did he teach? Then he thought that Jesus was God and he was the Son of God.
Hold on.
If he didn't teach that he was the Son of God, then he is a heretic.
Kelvy, the problem, I recognize the problem with that, but we don't have any other source of information about Marcion because it was all destroyed by the heresiologists because it was blasphemous. So we don't know precisely what, all we have is the word of his enemies as to what he believed and the justification that was given for silencing him and erasing his, I mean, he was the
right, but they would have had to have a reason to do that.
Yeah, they did, because they were competing with a belief system, and his was catching on faster. He put together the first New Testament. That's why they had to rush to put together a New Testament.
what would his beliefs, if his belief system was catching on faster, then how could they have gotten rid of it more than Christianity spread?
Well, it took a long time. It didn't just happen overnight. I mean,
Yeah, but this is like 100, 200, 150 years before Rome became Christian. They were like,
this.
you know.
Okay, so it existed for a long time as they were trying to compile their stuff. Marcionism was widespread and more widespread, more widely received than what we currently look at as Christianity. Right? The idea that Jesus was the son of the God, the real God, was more popular. I mean, when there was a juxtaposition against the demiurge.
Most people had like one book that they wrote. That's just a fact. I think Marcion had like 2. As far as I know, I don't really specifically remember that, actually. I know it's, you know, because I don't think he had like a surplus. But you're right, the teaching spreads and catches on. But again, it seems very basic what he taught. So I don't, because if what he taught, for example, because do you agree with what he taught? Some of it?
Oh, I agree. It's definitely plausible.
So where's the slander? They're like, oh, we didn't, like, you know?
Well, to say that he was a heretic and that his writings should be destroyed, I mean, that's pretty much.
I might. Well, are we talking about civil rights?
All I'm agreeing with is all I can say is that whatever Irenaeus reported
that is to be an asshole. If you're going to burn somebody's writings,
going to let me. You're just not going to let me talk.
That I agree with that.
Okay.
I agree.
I just want to finish what I was saying.
Sorry, Josh.
I don't know precisely what Marcion believed, but if what Irenaeus said he believed is accurate, then I think that interpretation makes more sense than what I'm asked to believe through the other gospels, through the standard version of Christianity, because that's my own observation about the Old Testament God, Yahweh, and the way he behaved, as opposed to the New Testament Platonic sort of God that Jesus seems to appeal to.
So you're saying what Irenaeus says that Marcion believed, you agree with that? If that's what Marcion believed.
I say that is even more believable. If that was what he actually believed, even that is more acceptable, an explanation for the difference between the Old Testament God and the New Testament sort of Jesus version of God. And that's why I point out that I can't say that I'm necessarily agreeing with Marcion. I'm agreeing that what Irenaeus said about Marcion, if that's really what he believed, also makes sense. And I could see that where he would have got that from. I think that's a pretty valid thing he said about the Yahweh being.
You should check out Hippolytus. I think he describes, if I remember correctly, because I want to go back to Irenaeus. I actually want to replay it all. But I think he describes Marcion's views more, and he's closer to the time of Marcionism too, because I'm sure that the idea morphs over time as well.
That would be a good thing for you and I to have a good discussion on whenever I have a little more time. But I'm being summoned to another stream. But I did want to pop in and say hello to everybody because I don't get to do it very often. All right, later, guys. Appreciate you.
Thanks for coming, Will. Good to see you. Somebody's streaming over me. I'll have to destroy them. Oh, no, I'm just joking.
I enjoy arguing. I tend to not enjoy arguing anymore with people because I just get too angry at this point. Because I've heard most arguments I've heard so many times at this point. But some people I still enjoy arguing with. Will's one of them.
Yeah, I tend to try to lean more towards, conversations. There's still some fun arguments, you'd spar it out in the side chat or something, but yeah, I mean, it's like
don't know who Marcion is, but that's fun to talk about. I was recently learning about in several different sources. So it's like, oh, somebody Marcion. Let's talk about Marcion.
Yeah, that's one I'm not very familiar with. That's why I had to go and look them up. Sammy, Reina, Raid. Uh-oh. Spam.
Oh shit!
Spam.
They're
He's spamming
spamming.
us. I know what that means, but
P.S. Pritama. Pritam? Pritam.
Kryptonarma.
Yeah, I'm unfamiliar with Marcina, or however y'all are pronouncing that. Yeah, I probably last time I ever even heard of that person was probably back in like high school or something like that.
Rocky Marciano.
Marciano? I like Marciano cherries. Those are pretty damn good.
that's
Now, there's a thing,
maraschino. It's very similar, but it's a little bit different. Yeah.
There's a story of Polycarp when he traveled from 'cause Polycarp was like a bishop of in Turkey of Smyrna, and he traveled to Rome and he ran into and then Marcion and some of his people came up, and this is how they treated each other, because like he was still considered a heretic at the time, and he's like, oh, but Marcion came up like trying to be friendly with him and was like, hey, do you recognize me? Which is funny, like that fact, because again, history, as a history nerd, the very notion that somebody come up to this semi-famous, probably famous just amongst their own people at the time, amongst Christian people, that it came up as like, hey, do you recognize me? Like, how did people recognize each other back then? It's crazy to think about, because you had like, I know the concept of coins was propaganda back then, because that's how we know, like, we can see the visages of kings, lines of kings, like from like Macedonia and like Greece and like the Hellenic kingdoms. Like we have like, I don't know, the whole concept of the visages.
Well, and they did have portraits back in the day too. It just wasn't as common, right? That's why they did busts, because
masks.
Yeah.
They also had masks too, yeah. Like that would.
Oh yeah, that's right.
The rich people would have like a whole room where they had like masks of their ancestors. Like it'd be wild to find like a one of those, because they're still, they've like, like Pompeii, like the city that got buried by the volcano in like the year 79.
Right.
Like they've only dug out a little portion of that.
So he started telling the story of Polycarp. Is that how he? So I've read. I guess there's some dispute about this, but according to the Christians, I guess the lore that I've read, he ends up getting skinned alive. Is that right?
Oh damn!
Polycarp?
Yeah.
No, actually, again, I keep shilling on my channel, but the reason why I know it, because I did his martyrdom. No, he was burned alive. Yeah, I did like an illustrated, like sort of version of it. But yeah, he was one of because the
that's brutal though.
I believe it was Polycarp, Bishop of. So my memory is terrible. I believe it was Smyrna, or whatever city it was. Like they were one of the first cities to start worshiping the ruler, like the imperial temples, like the institute imperial temples to like Augustus, and so they were extra serious about their emperor worship. And so at that time, you have they were like, hey, everybody's gonna, like, they were one of the first places where they were like, hey, everybody's gonna come and participate in the festival and worship, light an incense to, sacrifice an animal to Caesar or whatever. And then the Christians would not do it. Yeah, he was one of the original.
Damn.
That's brutal, yeah. So they tried to burn him at the stake, and he didn't die. Then they stabbed him. I don't know where I got the
Yeah, they did stab him.
The idea that he was flayed.
To consume his body? Wait a minute. What? They were cannibals?
No.
No.
The fire didn't consume his body, so it either went out or just wasn't effective in killing him. So
Yeah, there's and one of his letters survived too that he wrote. But I'm gonna put the I'll put the link. Just to show my channel more. That's the link to my version of it, of the account of his martyrdom. Because like I remember I sat there looking up because there's one part where the governor, because Polycarp was like the head of the Christians of the area, and it's just like, come on, because if they get him to do it, then they can get everybody else to do it, and they sit on each side of him in like their chariot as they're like like the governor and like the procurator, like the mayor or whatever, and he's just like, yeah, I'm not gonna do it, and then they throw him out of the chariot and like says that like he dislocates his shoulder. And I used a scene from the movie Young Guns of somebody falling off their horse. Which I remember it took me like, I think 40 minutes to decide what to use for that.
Sodium is a type of salt, right? Or sodium.
Well, I mean,
Why
salt.
are those linked?
sodium is
I think
But I
salt's more like
recently learned that if you burn salt, you can burn salt water and make a black flame. That's pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, it's wild. It blocks the light spectrum. Yeah, table salt is sodium and chlorine mixed together. Well, you can like melt, or you can vaporize diamonds, because a diamond is basically like carbon and oxygen, or if you heat it up to like superheated levels, and then you add more like oxygen to it. So you're adding oxygen to carbon. You're basically creating CO2 because you're adding a second oxygen to carbon atom, and so it goes from a solid to it burns up. Basically, it burns. I mean, that's literally what burning up is something becoming carbon. But yeah, I wish I was in the chemistry more when I was younger. It's, the physical makeup of things. I kind of was, but I was more into esoteric stuff than I was in the chemistry. Oh, that stuff was all interesting too.
But like alchemy.
No, just like the general. I mean, I used to be in like a lot of shamanism, druidry.
What's I did the math and everything is stupid? What's that about, Gio?
That sounds. I want that on a T-shirt. I should have put my Cicero
I'm trying to get over to the
Sure, I
YouTube
think-
stream.
The Cicero is probably better to link in your chat. I'm not trying to sit there and push the martyrs on your audience.
Oh, Shillet, that's what the wrench is for.
All right, well, I'm going to put the Cicero speech then. I still have a U-boat video I haven't released. I haven't recorded. At some point, I decided to add all the stuff to it. And now I got overwhelmed, and I was like, I didn't get really overwhelmed. I was just like, whatever. And I just stopped feeling like doing it. Although I want to keep doing it. It's kind of like there's only so much time. Where's the Cicero one?
Well, Gio, if it was a calculation to make somebody laugh, you got me. It worked.
Yeah, Marcion believed that the like not a lot is known about what he believed, but it was basically like the Old Testament God is like the evil thing, and Jesus is something else. Because he would say, "Yeah, I'm a Christian, but I just don't believe the Old Testament God is the real, like that sort of thing. Like that's what the
Wait,
basic."
say that one more time.
Marcion believed that the Old Testament, like he would claim that they believed in Jesus, but they would say that the God of the Old Testament was evil basically, and the thing that is described is what that means. Because saying just it's evil is like a very basic thing, but that means the Gnostic demiurge, which that's not even necessarily evil. It's just more like ignorant or stupid, and somewhat like depends on which flavor of Gnosticism you're talking about, because there's different Gnosticism. When you look at how Gnosticism is described, there's like it's almost like this ever burgeoning, ever growing mutation of views that are just like sort of growing off each other. It reminds me of like some kind of many tentacled beast. Now again, like because Will's argument is like, well, you don't know that that's what those guys really believed. Like they could just be being slandered and saying that they believe that. And I'm just
It
like,
really
well,
doesn't matter who said it, but the idea that in the Bible that God is immoral and also does horrible things to people, that's pretty objective. I mean, you can read the Bible and see that. I mean, he himself, the God itself, starts off by saying he's a jealous God.
yeah. And I can remember hearing that and like hating that fact, because like for me back in the day, describing a human emotion to God was repugnant. If you told me God got angry, I remember the person who later on like actually I think his talking to me actually made me later on like was I think some like I always say that him I always said he gave me the saving message of the gospel, but earlier on talking to this person, he said to me, "Do you think God's angry with you?" And I remember getting so angry at even the notion that God even would get angry, let alone get jealous. So I was like, he's like, because to me that was like a petty, because all I could do is ascribe those things to any reason that any human would have those emotions, as far as which usually involves self-righteousness. But the thing I didn't really get is like, well, if there's anybody who has a right to get jealous over anything, it's probably God, because if he is God, then sure, then he has all the right to do whatever he wants, really. If he's good, anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, though, does it? That he would be swayed by such emotions. Seems just very ungodlike.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. If he is actually good, because to me, the idea of anything being good would have to be like, if there's any God, it would have to be good. And especially back in the day, if the God of the Christian God, I didn't see that as like the good God at all. So I was like, whatever the true God is, and I never doubted there was some God out there, but that was somehow trying to maybe reach people or whatever. But I never thought that it was the God of the Bible until.
It's one thing that I like about the Luciferianism is that the idea that they talk about that there is nothing, there is no like evil and like the darkness and stuff like that. Look, Cher Wilkes, wow, what a poignant like statement to make as I'm saying this. We need to see darkness in order to understand light. That is like that very close to what I was about to try to like point out is that idea that I've recently come across while checking out the occult and looking into
but do we?
Luciferianism. What's that?
If the light is living, which I now think the light is living. I think the light is what we call logos. Like the light itself is like because if you think about like light itself is the only, and I'm talking about just general physical Newtonian physics. Well, as much as Newtonian as you can get when it comes to particles, to elementary particles like photons, right? But light in itself is just like the way light operates as far as like energy and emotion, and it never stops. Some people say that matter is just light that is stopped somehow, but I mean everything as far as light, as far as like the radio waves and gamma rays and radiation and any kind of heat, like any of that, everything is just a form of light. So, and if there is a God, that because if there is a consciousness, then it would have to be, and I think the Bible does say that God is light anyway, but I don't know that necessarily would mean that God is photons, but if that light is because again, what is the meaning of light? It's something that is always in motion, and so that's where it has to start with this constant. Because I mean, if there's anything, there's light. Because I don't. That's the thing. I don't believe in yin yang anymore. Yeah, I'll shut up now. I should
Dualism, right? As in.
Well, that's actually. Sorry, go ahead, Tobin.
No, go ahead, Kevin. You go. You go.
I was gonna say that's. I think that's. It's actually counterintuitive. It's just a matter of our perspective that everything we see seems to be illuminated. But like if you look out into the universe, I think astronomy, generally says that actually most of the universe is comprised of darkness, right? Like most places in the universe actually don't get light. We just happen to be in an area that does. So it's kind of anomalous.
Darkness. When we close our eyes, we're in darkness.
Yeah, but if darkness, if everything starts with either one or the other, but if darkness is, well, I guess that's the question right there. If darkness is a substance, or if I think darkness is a quality, which is just rather the quality of the lack of the substance, if we're considering light to be a substance of any sort at all. Because then I think if darkness is the lack of a substance, then I don't think that the lack of that substance is necessary for the sake of the substance itself, which is light. That's why I don't believe in the dark light paradigm anymore. And then further, but only again because I concluded at this point that the light is conscious light, and that it is God who's come from God, sent from God, and that's Jesus, the Son, sent from the Father, who's come, and then the Holy Spirit is in us from believing and knowing Him, and that light is now in us, and then we shed the light, and et cetera, et cetera. You've heard it.
Well, it is interesting because when you think about it, all light that we know of, right? Light comes from some source that radiates outward, right? Like, but we don't know the source of darkness. Like, darkness just exists, right?
Well, it's nothingness. That's like cold is the lack of, because all heat is the exchange of energy. Heat isn't the energy for its own sake. An energy source is going to cause an exchange of the energy, which is it's recognized by us as heat. And then the more you start sucking that energy away, things start to become cold. Just like the more you start sucking the light away, it becomes dark or dim. And so, again, it's the lack of the quality of something that makes it. Now, then, if we're only coming from our perception of it, then, that's like, okay. But then that is like saying if everything disappears with your eyes closed. But then there are some parts of, like quantum physics that seem to imply such things.
Yeah, aren't they trying to find like dark matter, like the matter that makes up darkness? Because protons and photons are what make up the light spectrum. I don't know. I think I might be messing that up.
Well,
I think
the light spectrum is just photons, which are elementary, so they don't have any. It's the only thing that again, it's the way it's measured. It's always in motion, so it's energy that has no weight, it has no mass. But think about if you charge a battery, you're literally putting energy into that, but you're not.
But that has that deals with heat. Like energy
all the heat is
like
the
thermodynamics. Like when you go into talking about batteries, that is heat. And when we talk about energy, that is the transfer of heat. That's what we think of as energy. Is the
right, but
transfer
there's no
of heat.
weight. There's no weight changing. So the point is that photons and energy, because all light is just energy in motion, and so it never stops for some reason, for some inexplicable reason. It's like and then it's traveling through the electromagnetic spectrum itself, which I don't even fully understand the relationship between that. Because that's like would be the medium that it's traveling through. We only know that it exists because it works when we use it, electromagnetism, and then the rest of it's, the various forces. But the going from gamma rays, it's all basically how the light spectrum is how that energy is moving. Because if it's moving, it's not moving in a straight line. That would be kind of unnatural. Although I guess there are forces that do move in straight lines. As far as I guess what is considered straight, because even if it's going in like a wave, like whoa 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 whoa, it's still going in a direction. So because if something is in motion, it needs to be being moved in a direction. Because that just that's why I think creation, when it comes from like if we're talking about a creator or like you have time, space, and matter. Because time, space, and matter, you need space to be moving in, and you need matter, which is you need the thing to be moving, and then you need the time it takes in order to move from one space to another. So time, space, and matter is like the holy trinity of existence in a way, to where like you have these things, and then light is the most elemental form of that, because then you have this force that's traveling through space and time, and so. At one point long ago, I concluded that I use the form electrons. I even heard a theory that the electrons aren't even real, and that they're all just like sort of reflections of like the medium through which they're. I didn't go because I don't even try to look
measured.
Yeah,
one thing that it's kind of like it's got my head kind of
Well, they always
is
match
this,
up with the amount of protons.
where it says, thus dark matter constitutes 85% of the total mass, while dark energy and dark matter can constitute 95%. But what's really messing me up is this dark energy. Like darkness has a quality of energy. Like,
Well, just
huh?
remember when
What?
they say energy, they're just talking about the point of change between medium. Yeah, because the difference between mass, which is just the quantification of what the substance is of that stuff, whatever it is we're talking about, and then the energy itself, just like the difference between cold and heat, is just the exchange of this of the energy itself is the change of these substances, how they're changing through time.
Yeah, there's like a qualitative difference there. It's, I think dark energy is like it moves like much the way that light does, right? Like a lot of people confuse the concept of dark matter with like empty space, but dark matter isn't empty space. Or dark matter, as it says there, is it hypothetically it has a mass.
Because the four energies, or the four, what are they called? Four something shit. The four somethings of the physics. It's one of them, the electromagnetism, because that's like the thing through which everything flows. That's why the guy that discovered it, James Clerk Maxwell, like in like the 1800s, he had a compass, and he was outside like trying to find his way home in like a thunderstorm, trying to get his sheep. And he was like some like genius. He was like a sheep herder in like Scotland or something. And he noticed when lightning struck, his compass would like whirl, like as the lightning bolt hit. And he was like, what the hell kind of witchcraft is this? Like why did the lightning make the change? So he kind of put together in his head that there's some kind of connection between the same force that caused his compass to always point north and whatever energy or force this lightning bolt had. And then he started putting together equations and making like that's where you get all these different guys writing about, volts and hertz and all that kind of stuff. But the other one's the strong and weak nuclear force, which is what holds together particles, and like just like the protons and the neutrons and the electrons that are either, because once something's together, then it's held together. The most basic of all matter in the universe is just a hydrogen atom, right? Just a hydrogen proton, just one proton being held together, and then there's what's called a neutron, and then but it doesn't actually, it's not like it's a ball. I think it's some kind of like a, if you look at what it is, it's made up of like a bunch of different things that are held together, and the thing that holds them together
is a part of an atom, correct?
Right. And the thing that holds them together is
Yeah.
the nuclear force, because that's the nucleus of an atom. So there's the strong nuclear force is holding together those bits, and then the weak nuclear force is what keeps everything from sticking together. So the weak nuclear force is like, because and I think that kind of is what decides what's solid and what's not solid. Because the weak nuclear force is just kind of, atoms repel each other. They don't just automatically stick together. There's a force holding them apart. That's just kind of, doesn't need to be strong. But the strong nuclear force is what's holding the bits that are holding together. And nobody really knows what's holding them together. That's where they theorized. And then they, then discovered the Higgs boson, because bosons are the once you get down to the more fundamental elementary particles, bosons, and then their counterparts are the leptons, and just it only goes down so far, though. It's not infinite. Like they have reached a point, like mathematically, like it's actually known to the whatever power it, like you can keep going down to size. So it's not like we know the universe is not infinite. Like there's some kind of like it stops at a certain point. Like we can see what it's made of. Like it does not keep going.
Well, the observable universe.
Oh, so the fourth one is gravity. So they got the electromagnetism, you had the strong weak nuclear force, and then gravity. But then the fact that they say gravity is a lot weaker than it should be, and so something is basically sucking all the gravity away, or causing all the gravity to be sort of like, because the way we see gravity, because all gravity is the warping of space. Gravity isn't actually a force; it's more like a event of the warp. It's because just like you see like usually is
gravity is part of motion. Is like
part of motion. Yeah, that's a good way of saying it.
Is because of
like a bowling ball and a trampoline. Like everything that has a substance is causing a change in the space time around it, and therefore so something like a planet or a star, or like anything that's humongous, like you're causing these forces to be sort of, and so that's everything being relative to each other, so if you're near a planet, you're going to get pulled into it because it's warping space-time so much that's just what's going to happen. Like it's as opposed to if there was no planet there, then there's no motion there. Because again, if think about it in a universe where there was nothing except for one object, would that object being in motion even make a difference? Like, what would the difference be if there's nothing else for it to be in motion with? But anyway, on that note, I just noticed it's like 2:30 in the morning, and I do have to work.
Sleep is very important. It helps with cognitive capabilities.
Yes, I am.
You want a nice fluffy brain. You want to grow your brain. You want to take care of that thing. It's the only one you got. Sleep is good for that.
Very good advice, my friend.
Unless you get one of those Elon Musk implants, then you might get a second chance. He's making it.
I have no doubt about it. Yeah, he thinks it's all simulation. So once you're there, you're like, what? You might as well. And why not? Like the thing with the Matrix. Remember the guy? It's like, I know this steak ain't real, but it tastes good. So whatever.
I think the line he uses, "Ignorance is bliss." Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's like, there's that movie about that lately where if everybody had on like virtual reality thing or whatever, but in real life it was like government slums. I forgot what it was called. Actually, I think there's a couple different books like that, or stories or movies, or whatever they got. Whatever the kids are watching these days.
We're over here on California time. The only people who've got it better than us are the Hawaiians, I guess.
So the volcano started erupting.
Yeah.
And the space lasers start hitting them.
So I'm concerned because the safety seal on my frozen spaghetti was broken, and so now I'm not sure if this is tainted or not. So I'm gonna try to eat it anyway. But if I die of food poisoning, you'll know why.
I totally profiled somebody the other day. I went to 7-Eleven and I made a coffee, and I set it down, and I went and I did something, and the coffee was sitting there with the lid off of it. And this guy, I guess he's maybe in his 20s. I don't know. He was. It's funny because he's one of those dudes that just kind of never changes throughout all the time periods. He had like jeans and like a black T-shirt and like really long hair. He looked kind of like I don't know, he was like a goth or whatever. But I don't know. That means nothing because he stood there over my coffee with like the lid over it, like, and with like his head, and I'm like, I have no idea if he spit in it or not, and it's like I can't prove that he didn't, and I'm like, but the fact that he either maybe he just didn't realize it, but if he had his own coffee, he would have had to have known that my coffee was there. So if he either didn't care then, that either way, I couldn't take the chance.
Maybe he was thinking about stealing your coffee, and then he realized you were watching him.
Or maybe he knew that I was gonna like. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna make this guy think that I might be spitting in his coffee, and he won't know, and it's just gonna screw him. I'm gonna watch what he does. Like, if some people just, if I can think about it, somebody else would actually do it. I'm sure. Or is that just me being paranoid?
I have a friend that I mess with him that way. Every time he makes me something to eat, because he likes to cook, I always ask him, "Did you spit in it?" And he'll get really offended. And no matter how many times I do it, every time he's like, "Why would you think I would do that?"
You'll never get any spit, but I might shoot a snot rocket or give you some of that good old dandruff salt.
Waiting, I love that movie.
Oh yeah, that was a good one. Where they do the bat wing, try to make you look at your nutsack. That was a great movie.
Yeah.
Some sprouts, fresh sprouts. Or they call them bean sprouts. The goat. Yeah, I don't know if you ever saw the bloopers of that movie on DVD. There was bloopers of those dishwashers. Like, one of maybe like the 30 times in my life I've cracked up laughing beyond breathing and crying, where I'm laughing so hard, was watching the blooper reel of that.
Is that Andy Milonakis? I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, that's who that was. And the other guy. Yeah, they were just riffing. I think they were just improv the whole thing. That stuff was just hysterical. Because I used to be a dishwasher back in the day too. Like that big black dude in that movie. I was like that when I was like, I don't know, like younger. So there was like, it's like, it's like the dishwasher trope was such. It's like, I could probably help you out. You have some kind of counseling, anger management. So you can help me with that. Maybe you should do the fucking dishes. Shut the
Yeah, I was a dishwasher for quite a while too. Actually, it was a shitty job, at the time, but looking back on it, it definitely helped me learn a lot about philosophy. There's actually a pretty decent movie with Sean Astin and Matthew Lillard called Dish Dogs. Have you ever heard of
Yeah.
that? And Brian Dennehy, Shannon Elizabeth. There's a lot of good extra, cameos or whatever in there, but it's kind of like a B movie they did, and that's where I first heard about George Bernard Shaw. They quote a couple of his they do they incorporate that into it, and it's all about dishwashing like as a philosophy of life and stuff. And they just kind of travel up and down the California coast. These two surfer dudes, and that's all they do is just like get odd jobs washing dishes, and it's pretty interesting. Yeah, I don't know, just kind of brought up memories.
I remember some maxim somewhere. I don't know if it was Taoist.
No, I
where it's
definitely
like
haven't seen that one.
sweeping is considered the ultimate meditation. Or I think it may have been from like the Buddha, where he's like, oh, if you're in doubt about something, sweep. If you want to, basically, for any kind of advice that they would offer, the advice is to go sweep. Because then basically you're giving an opportunity to be clearing your mind while you're doing something. I think is the idea of it. But it's something that you can literally program your body to be doing some kind of like mindless muscle memory work, to where your brain has no choice but to go off on its own thing.
Yeah, you're the second person I've heard say that recently. Now I'm trying to think. I might have been at like one of my other groups or something that I heard that recently. But yeah, about sweeping the floor. It's interesting. Yeah, it's kind of a similar concept though.
I'm like super ADHD, so I have to put other things on to get myself more distracted in order to be able to focus, because I have to have some level of distraction in order to not be distracted, which doesn't make any sense at all. I'm not describing it very well anymore.
I'm similar too, but like at the time when I was doing that, I've never really been into like, technology much, like I'm sure I had like an MP3 player, but like the concept of getting headphones and taking it into work like never occurred to me. So I'd stand back in the dish tank, and that was like one of my big creative spots. I would be back there washing dishes, and I would start singing to myself, and I would hear like a tune in my head, and then I would go back on my lunch break and write the lyrics down, and yeah, it's a big creative boost for
I
me
like
for
doing
some
it
reason.
with the lawnmower and mowing grass because it's really loud and you can just kind of like let it out and nobody can hear you.
It's a good point. The only time I really sing anymore is when I'm driving in the car. It's depressing.
Yeah, I used to do that all the time. And I remember having my windows down one time, and I was stopped at a red light when somebody pulled up next to me, and all of a sudden I became like really self-conscious. I was just belting it out. I saw them looking at me, and I was like, shit, and I just rolled the windows up.
Washing dishes for a restaurant though is pretty challenging though. If you're at a high-paced restaurant and they start running out of, certain dishes, you get people yelling at you, "Where's the silverware?" "Where's the large plates?" It can be a challenging job too.
Where I was at, we had the regular restaurant, so that wasn't too bad. But we did banquets, and those were the worst because you go in there, and there would be like 200 to 400 plates coming back at you all at once, and it was just, it was a nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah. Not really a fan of washing the dishes though. Getting the hands all like wrinkly and like, I don't know. It's not the most glamorous job. It's really not.
Actually, I was considering going back to it recently just to have like, less responsibility, just like a simpler way of life, And they get paid pretty decently in my area. Like when I used to do it, I was getting minimum wage. And I started looking around here. I was like, shit, dishwashers are making almost as much as I'm making, and I'm in a licensed professional career. It's like might as well just go do that. But the hours aren't as good.
It's nuts, dude. Like things are not fairly priced. Like certain jobs, like I go back to the whenever I started doing remodeling and things like this and doing roofs, like I'm actually putting myself in, you know, sometimes sketchy positions, being up on high on top of things. There's an element of risk to it. And like I could have made more money being a barista or being a waiter at a restaurant, it seems so messed up, like how we how they figure out the price they're gonna pay somebody for doing some jobs.
Yeah, there's definitely imbalance there, and the amount of like effort it takes and all the shit you have to put up with, especially in food service. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting debate that people are trying to, not even just like, they're like here, they're like tax the tips and all of that stuff. I don't know if they do that over there, but it's like,
Yeah, there's tip share where you're paying out to the other people in the restaurant, like the food runner or the person at the expo, um, the bus boy. But over here, really depends on the company that you're with because it's um it all depends on which restaurant you're at. They can all have their own different policy.
I worked at a restaurant, and I worked at a gas station, and I worked at a Atlas van line. All of a sudden, I went from making like $9 an hour to making like $25 an hour. Like that was in like probably 1996, and then like that didn't last. Like that lasted for like a while, and then I worked at a pizza shop for a while. I was making pizza, and then this girl wanted to ask, like, then fast forward a couple years of working in this pizza shop, and then this girl asked for a ride. She's like, "Oh, I'll smoke a blunt with you if you give me a ride to this place." It was like one of those like trade schools, because back then there was always trade schools popped up. Basically, they basically talked young people into putting themselves in debt legally to them for like 15 grand or 20 grand to like go to these like year-long courses to where you get degrees that actually don't really mean anything. I mean, you do go to a course and you get certified because then, they did, I mean, it was legal, but at some point it became so many of them, like it wasn't necessarily predatory, but a lot of people.
Well, the problem is that they can hand out more certificates than there are the jobs to be able to go get into those certain trades.
Oh, when I started doing that, because that was like 2001, I started that, and like, and all of a sudden I was like back in school because I graduated high school in like 1995, and then I went to a community college for like part of a year, and then I like was like I don't want to do this anymore because it just bored me so much, and then which is a stupid reason to not do it. Yeah, and then that person, but yeah, so because at that point they were promising like, oh, when you start it, you're gonna get started like making like $70,000 a year, and like and then after a year you're gonna be making like they promised like all this. But the thing is, like that was when like all of a sudden that became like a really big thing, so everybody started going in the business. So obviously that market became saturated. But the girl that I went there with, she went to was courses in like electronics, like soldering, like making like radios and stun guns. but yeah, she never used any of it, unfortunately. She actually got pregnant by somebody there. And
That's one way to kill your career.
yeah, and he was like a 50-year-old dude. She was like, I don't know, 23 or something. Yeah, that didn't go well for her. For the in the long run, I don't know what they're doing now, so I can only pray for them.
Yeah, she should have been over here, like in the professional sector over here. Just like you'd be able to like bring your baby to work, and you know. That got dark.
Yeah, that was wild times. The computers. Well, looking back, I wanted to do philosophy. I was like, well, you can't make any money doing it. Like, well, what kind of career is philosophy? So I was like, all right, well, I guess computers. Because I talked to one guy who got some computer job, and he was like, yeah, he's just talking about like just what it was. I was like, I can do that. And I just learned it. Problem is, like, I don't like love it. Like, it's like my passion. But then again, the only other thing was like to become like some kind of like school teacher. But yeah, but it was like on a whim like that I decided to do that. But again, once you learn that sort of trade, though, again, now like no matter what happens, because I stopped working for like 2 years, like just on purpose, just because I like was just like, and then I was like, do I want to do anything else? And I was like, no. I was like, no matter what, you know, I still have the skills that I learned from doing that, so that's what I'm still doing.
Yeah, I think with philosophy, it's like one of those things where you either end up teaching, or you end up being like an advisor. Or these guys now like are like doing like life coaching. I saw a big thing on that where it's like those guys make a bunch of money just to like get other people motivated just to go to their regular ass jobs. Like that's basically it. But
Yeah,
it's like you go through all that schooling and all you end up really doing is teaching.
Yeah, that's actually what my philosophy teacher said. She's like, unless you want to be a philosophy teacher, she's like, this is what, because like nowadays you can look at like, all right, well, like William Lane Craig, right? Like those kind of guys, Sam Harris. But I mean, they're also neurosurgeons, or like, well, the one guy's a neurosurgeon, or but hitting something like that's like somebody expecting to become like a top NFL player. Like every kid in high school that takes up football, that expects, oh, I'm going to be the one that hits. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, you're going to have to do something else. Like
that's the interesting thing with like Sam Harris doesn't even actually practice medicine, right? But he just studies the findings of actual medical professionals. Like that's his whole gig, It's like, wow.
Or at least never actually, I thought he was like a brain surgeon.
No, I mean he's considered he is a neuroscientist, but all he does is studies data. He doesn't, and he does experiments, but he doesn't do any type of he doesn't do the scans, right? He just analyzes the scans. Yeah.
Shoot, I'm practically an astrophysicist. Practically. All right, I'm going to bounce. Thank you, gentlemen. Y'all have a good night.
Later, Kelby.
Later, Kelby. Thanks for coming, man.
Peace.
Sure, that's actually a really cool job. I've always wanted to get involved in something like that.
That would be something I would take part in.
I'd like to be like one of the makeup creators or something. I think I could think of some pretty crazy shit. But I have no experience with makeup. I would just be winging it, So you actually have to get some type of degree for that.
Makeup is kind of challenging working with it. It doesn't. I'm talking from this experience with messing with my kids and doing Halloween and like trying to paint up their faces. We got to the point to where we're just like, wear a mask.
Yeah, that's always been easier for me. Plus, I have sensitive skin, so if I wear makeup, I just break out. Because there's probably ways around that, right? But I don't know. Well, we are approaching midnight here, so I should probably start to wrap up the stream. Tobin, you've been releasing some music. You want to show any of that out?
Yeah. I'll link my channel to it.
All right, cool. Yeah. Put up the link there. I'm digging the stuff you're doing now, and you're working on a new album. Is that based on the concepts of what you're putting out now, or is that something completely different?
No. Yeah, it's a completely different whole nother ball game. I think it's definitely going to I think I'm going to share a darker side of myself with this next group of songs. And there's 12 of them, dude. I actually really wanted to talk to you because there's 12 tracks that I recorded that are drums, and basically I'm starting to see that, you know, I only have so much more time here, and I'm not sure if I could make all 12 of them. So I'm like, I think it would be cool if, if we could correspond, and like I could share some stuff that I'm working on and be like, get your opinion on what I should be working on. I don't know, dude. Mm, I, mm, I got a lot to work with, and I want to put what I put out, the next stuff that I put out, I want to put out the best of it. But right now, like what
Yeah,
I'm
we can
producing
talk a
and
little
putting
bit
out,
after the stream.
I'm just making it in one night. Heck yeah. I'm
I don't
getting
want
my
to give away all the
channeling.
secrets. Okay, I was going to try to do it, but mine's moving super slow.
It's almost there. And I can copy this and close this. And then I do this. Yay! There it goes.
Ta-da! Yeah, go check out
Yeah.
Tobin's channel, everybody, for great music content.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so I guess since we're wrapping up, I will remind you, thanks for the like, Nanya Biz. Do like the video, people, and share it to other people if you please. With that, I will wrap the stream up by saying the same thing I say every time, which is much love, be well, and stay trusty. And see you next time. I have no idea what I'm doing.